So I copied and pasted this wonderful table about New Zealand horse racing, I think. We'll come back to Google Docs. I literally pasted it in here. But if you started with your own table, you will go to Insert, Table, and then select how many columns and how many rows. If you keep going down, it will just add more. All right, so it's already inserted. And if we scroll down, we see it's long enough to go over several pages. And that's on purpose because there's a new option now to repeat the row headers. And we'll start with that. So the current problem that we have, all right, so this says 1963. Is that the date the jockey won his first race? Is it the date he was born? I don't know, we'll see. So what we can do is come up to the top. In this case, we have one row that we want to repeat. So in order to get a lot of these controls, what you can do is right click anywhere in the table. We'll scroll down a little bit on the menu and select table properties. You'll get this menu that comes up on the right hand side. And the first thing we want to do is pin the header row. So when you put a check mark in there, it defaults to pinning one row. If you had more than one, you just use these arrows to change it, but we just have one. And so when we scroll down to a subsequent page now, you'll see this header row repeat. So I find a date, 1963. I just have to look up at the top of the page, and I can see that that's when the jockey was born. Now the next thing that you'll see is these controls that pop up now at the top of every column. And I'm saying now because these are relatively new when this video is made, which is 2022. If you don't see these, they're rolling out now, so you should see them in the next couple of weeks. But when you hover over them, you should get the ability to move the column around. So those 6 little dots are kind of like a handle. And when you hold the mouse button down, you get control over it. But you'll see when you go over columns that are wider, you can also sort. So you can sort ascending, descending by the values in this column. And since you pin this header row, it won't sort the header. It will leave it there. Actually, I'll just show you right now. I'll do sort ascending. And you see it move these values around, but occupation's still at the top. And you can also use this to insert columns. But we'll go back to born, and you'll notice that you don't see those. So there's not enough room in this column to show them, but if you just make this column a little bit wider and you hover over the top, then you get more controls. So make it even wider, and when you hover over, you see all 3 available controls. And next we're going to talk about how this table fits onto the page. So if we go back to the source, you can see that more data is fit on the page, right? A lot more rows here. And what's happening is that the columns are wider when they contain more data. So we'll go back to this table, and this occupation column, it's just too skinny, right? It makes even just the word occupation take up too much vertical space in this document. So there's 2 ways to change this. One is you could hover over the column and just manually adjust it, but you can also come over to the right. And if you put a check mark in the column width, you can control it exactly here. So if you have a hard time getting it just right, you can even change this number, let's say 1.2 inches, and it adjusts it accordingly. All right, we'll make this one a little bit wider as well. And you can see that, let's go back before I did that. Right now you're seeing 2 rows. Before I did that, you were only seeing this one. So it helps to have more content fit on here. So the born column, that data isn't very wide, so we can shrink that and then make the contribution and honors even larger. Okay, so the next thing that's going on in this table is that you get a visual hint as to what the column header is because it's a little bit darker. I need to hide this for now. But this probably only came over because I pasted it from this table, but you can control this yourself. So let's see, let's select this entire table. And we'll scroll down to the bottom, and if you change the cell background color, let's just make it white. You can make it whatever you want. I would choose a color that's similar but just a little bit darker. So we'll go back to what it was, or close to what it was, and then that way it looks more like a header. And the last thing that we want to do with this table, let's say you want each page to stand on its own, right? So if I go down, you'll see this row, Hector Gray. is so large that it overflows onto the next page. If you don't want that to happen, you need to put the cursor anywhere in the row and just uncheck the ability to allow it to overflow. All right, so that'll keep it with the rest of its data all on one page. All right, another thing to see with these new controls is that you can easily insert rows with this little plus sign here. You can also pin the rows with this control and use these 6 dots to move them around to swap places with other rows. So these won't delete rows, it will just change the orders. If I let go now, Sir Patrick's going to go below Seton Otway. Let's say we want to shrink this even more. A shortcut that you can do is holding down the control key and pressing A while you still have it held down selects everything. And now that you have everything selected, you can come up to the font size controls, hit the negative a few times to shrink down the font. That's going to take everything in the table and make it smaller. All right, for the alignment, the table alignment affects the entire table. So if you have a table that's this wide, you won't notice this very much. If I center align it, it barely shifts. But if you want all of the content to be aligned, if you do Control A again to select everything, then you can just come to Format, Align and Indent, and center align everything that way, just like you would if it was in a normal document. All right, and if you want even more control over this table, what I would suggest is creating the table in Google Sheets and then embedding it in Google Docs, and you can keep it as a live embed so you can update it in the spreadsheet and the changes will flow through to the document. I'll link to a video right now on how to do that I made a couple years ago, but it still works. And beyond that, that's all there is to table formatting in Google Docs. And if you like this video and you subscribe to my channel, you'll see a lot more just like it. Thanks for watching. It's nice to have you along.